It's Christmas night, 1776. A defeated general stares across a freezing river choking with ice. Behind him is an army that's falling apart. His soldiers are barefoot. Their enlistments run out in a week, and the country he is fighting for has quietly almost given up on him. In a few hours, he is going to bet the entire American Revolution on one impossible attack. If he loses, it's over. There is no second army behind him. We're taught the American Revolution like it was destiny, brave colonists, a few famous battles, freedom, the end. But that is not what the people living through it believed. For a few weeks in the winter of 1776, the revolution wasn't winning, it was dying. Congress was running. Thousands of Americans were switching sides, and the British were so sure it was over that one of their top generals packed his bags to sail home. So how close did it really come, and what actually saved it? Stick around because the turning point is stranger than the legend. Go back to the late summer of 1776. The Declaration of Independence is only weeks old, and almost immediately it starts going wrong. Washington loses the Battle of Long Island. He loses New York City. Then comes the blow that nearly breaks him. In November, the British and their Hessian mercenaries storm Fort Washington on the Hudson. 3,000 of his best troops surrender at once, along with mountains of cannon and muskets. It was one of the most crushing blows of the entire war, and from across the river, Washington watches it happen. Here is the part the textbooks leave out. When he sees his own men being bayoneted by the Hessians after they had surrendered, this famously iron-nerved man cried and sobbed like a child. What follows is not a campaign, it's a flight. Washington retreats across New Jersey with the British right behind him. His enlistments are expiring. His men are homesick and losing heart. By the time he reaches the Delaware River, the army that was supposed to win American independence has melted down to about 3,000 men. He grabs every boat for miles, crosses into Pennsylvania, and prays the river is enough to stop them. Now, you would think his own officers would rush to help. One of them did the opposite, and this is documented. His name was Charles Lee, no relation to the famous one. Lee was the Army's second-in-command, loud, arrogant, and convinced he should be running the whole war instead of Washington. So when Washington sent him order after order, come across the river, bring your 7,000 men, we need you now, Lee stalled. He made excuses, he argued, he paltered and prevaricated and lied. Behind Washington's back, Lee was writing letters trying to poison other leaders against him. He called Washington most damnably deficient. He hoped that if Washington failed, command would be handed to him. So, at the most dangerous moment of the war, Washington lost more men to the schemer in his own camp than to the enemy, and then history wrote one of its strangest punchlines. Lee left his army to sleep at an unguarded tavern miles from his troops. A local loyalist tipped off the British, who galloped in at breakfast and grabbed him, still in his flannel nightgown and slippers, and carried him off on someone else's horse. The man who wanted to replace Washington took himself out of the war in his pajamas. Here is how bad it had gotten. This is the part that really shows how close it came. In Philadelphia, people are hiding their valuables and shipping their wives and children out into the countryside. The Continental Congress, the government of this brand new nation, gets scared and abandons the capital, fleeing all the way to Baltimore. The British commanders offer a deal. Swear loyalty to the king within 60 days and you are pardoned, and within 10 days around 3,000 people take it. Many of them wealthy, respected citizens. They've read the situation and they've decided the revolution is finished. The British thought so too. General Howe was being compared to Julius Caesar. He came, he saw, he conquered. Lord Cornwallis was so certain the war was won that he packed his trunks and sent them aboard a ship, planning to sail home to England for the winter. The leftover Hessians could mop up whatever was left. It's at this exact moment that Thomas Paine sits down and writes the line that defined the era. These are the times that try men's souls. The cause looked dead, but Washington was not ready to bury it. What he plans next is borderline insane. He is going to recross that frozen river at night in a storm and hit the enemy where they least expect it. Their forward post at Trenton, held by Hessian troops sleeping off Christmas, Christmas night, 1776. The river is choked with huge blocks of ice ripping downstream. Two of his three crossing groups can't make it through and give up. Washington crosses anyway with about 2,500 men. It takes more than 10 hours, and it works for one reason. A regiment of fishermen from Marblehead, Massachusetts, men who know boats and ice, ferry the whole army over without losing a single man or a single gun. Then comes a 9-mile march through a blinding storm of snow and sleet. Two soldiers freeze to death on the road. At sunrise, they hit Trenton from two directions at once. It's over fast. The American guns sweep the streets. The Hessian commander, Colonel Rahl, is killed, and around 1,000 Hessians surrender. American losses in the fighting? 2 men killed, 2 more frozen on the march. That was it. In a single dawn raid, Washington had done the impossible and given a dying country a reason to believe again. When the news hits New York, the British holiday party is over. Cornwallis unpacks those trunks and races back with 8,000 men to trap the old fox. He corners Washington against the Delaware, and confident he has finally won, he goes to bed saying, "At last we have run down the old fox, and we will bag him in the morning." But in the morning, the camp is empty. Through the night, Washington left his fires burning bright and a few men noisily digging while his whole army slipped quietly around the British flank in the dark. At Princeton, he smashes into the British rear guard. For a moment, his men waver until Washington himself gallops straight into the gunfire to rally them. In about 20 minutes, it's a rout. Think about what just happened. In a campaign of barely 3 weeks, Washington took a beaten, broken, disappearing army, fought 2 battles, captured nearly 2,000 prisoners, and won back almost all of New Jersey. The British generals who had been mocking him now feared him. New recruits started coming back. The tide had turned. But don't mistake survival for safety, because 1 year later the cause nearly died a second time. Not from British guns, but from neglect. The winter at Valley Forge. The record is brutally specific. As the soldiers marched to their winter camp, you could trace their route in the snow by the blood from their bare, frostbitten feet. Nearly 3,000 men were unfit for duty because they were barefoot and otherwise naked. Some had no blankets and sat up all night by fires just to survive. Soldiers yoked themselves to wagons like oxen to haul supplies for the sick. And here is the gut punch. Much of this misery wasn't because the country was poor, it was mismanagement. Shoes and clothing sat rotting in storehouses for want of wagons to carry them. The army nearly froze to death, within reach of its own supplies. So strip away the legend, and here is what's left. The American Revolution was not a sure thing. For a few weeks in December 1776, it hung on one stubborn man's refusal to quit, a regiment of fishermen, and a gamble in the dark that by any reasonable odds should have failed. Change one boat, one frozen river, one more day of doubt, and the country we know might never have existed. Thomas Paine wrote that Americans had it in their power to begin the world over again. For a few freezing weeks, it almost ended before it began. So here's my question for you. Was it leadership, luck, or both that saved the revolution that winter? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more of the history they skip in school, subscribe. The next story might surprise you even more.